Hello everyone, so let's begin our discussion on hernia. Hernia, so as you already know, hernia is a very important topic both for the theory as well as the practical. In practical, it is more important than theory. But in theory also, you can get a long question and short notes from this topic on hernia. And hernia is a very common clinical occurrence in the field of surgery, and that is why it is very important for the exam. So let's begin with the definition of hernia, that is what hernia is. So hernia is an abnormal protrusion of the whole or part of a viscous is singular for viscera, okay, that is an organ. So it can be the whole or part of a viscous through an opening in the wall of the cavity in which it is contained. Okay, so the definition might look a bit confusing at first, but if you break it into simpler parts, then you can understand what a hernia is. So a hernia is an abnormal, so this is the most important, it's not normal, it's an abnormal protrusion. So this is what hernia is, it's a protrusion of the whole or part of a viscous. So it can be either that the whole viscous is protruding, or it can be that a part of that viscous is protruding. So it can be either whole or part of the viscous through what? Through an opening. So there is an opening where in the wall of the cavity, in which it is contained. Okay, so this is the generalized broad definition of hernia. We have different types of hernia, you are going to learn about that. So it can be that in some cases the wall of the cavity is the abdominal wall, which we are going to discuss. It can be some other wall in some other types of hernias. So it is basically that wall in which the viscous is contained. It is the cavity in which the viscous is present. So for example, in very simple terms, if I keep this pen inside my pocket like this, it's not protruding, it's not doing anything. The pocket is the cavity in which this pen is contained. Now if it sticks out like this, okay, if it sticks out like this, that is, it is abnormally protruding through what? Through the wall of what? Of the cavity in which it is contained. Okay, so this is what in very simple terms a hernia is. So we would be discussing about external hernia, and in external hernia we would be mostly talking about abdominal hernia. So external abdominal hernia. We can have internal hernias also. We are not going to discuss about them. We should not be confused about those things at this point. So that is why we are talking about external, so we can visualize it externally, and we are restricting ourselves to the region of the abdomen. So an external abdominal hernia is what? Is a protrusion of a viscous. It is the protrusion of a viscous from the peritoneal cavity. Since we are talking about abdominal hernias, from the peritoneal cavity through a weak part of the abdominal wall, because we are talking about external abdominal hernias. Okay, abdominal wall. So now let's look at a few common types of hernia. So some common external hernia are: number 1, inguinal hernia; number 2, femoral hernia; number 3 is umbilical hernia; number 4, incisional hernia. So these are the most common types of hernia that we encounter in a clinical practice, and that is why these are the 4 hernia which we are going to talk about, okay, because these are the most important. Some less common external hernias. Examples are: number 1, epigastric hernia, and number 2 is lumbar hernia. epigastric hernia and lumbar hernia. And some rare types of hernia, they are Spigelian hernia, obturator hernia, and gluteal hernia. So these are the types of hernia based on the location. So if it's in the inguinal canal, it's inguinal hernia. In the femoral canal, femoral hernia. Near the umbilicus, umbilical hernia. Due to an operation, post-operation in the incision site, incisional hernia. If it's in the epigastric region, it's an epigastric hernia. In the lumbar region, lumbar hernia. Spigelian hernia through the Spigelian fascia, that is the layer of tissue which separates the two abdominal muscles. Okay, it's a lateral ventral type of hernia. Next, in the obturator region, obturator hernia, and gluteal hernia. So the most common ones are the inguinal, the femoral, the umbilical, and the incisional. So now let's talk about the precipitating factors for development of hernia. So why do people suddenly develop hernia? Okay, so the two important precipitating factors are, number one, weakness of the abdominal wall, and the second is a continued or repeated increased intra-abdominal pressure. So just as I had given that example, so this pen in my pocket. So when can this pen in my pocket protrude out? Number one, if my pocket is very thin and flimsy, you can visualize that there is a pen which is protruding out from the outside. If it's made up of a good material cloth, then you may not be able to visualize it. But if it's made up of a flimsy and thin cloth, then you are going to be able to visualize that this pen is protruding out from the pocket. So that is weakness of the abdominal wall. What can be the second factor? It is just like I am demonstrating to you. Yes, I am pushing the pen, okay, with force. So this is basically an increased pressure. Okay, continued or repeated increased intra-abdominal pressure is going to push the abdominal organs, okay, near the wall, and it is going to protrude. So these are the two precipitating factors. Now weakness of the abdominal wall. So we begin with weakness. This weakness can be a congenital weakness, or an acquired weakness, This congenital weakness is due to persistence of congenital peritoneal sac. For example, if we have persistent processus vaginalis, this is going to lead to indirect inguinal hernia in males. Okay, next is if we have a patent canal of Nuck, this can lead to indirect inguinal hernia in female. Okay, so persistent processus vaginalis, indirect inguinal hernia in male, persistent or patent canal of Nuck, indirect hernia in female, and incomplete obliteration of umbilicus. This is going to cause, yes, umbilical hernia. Okay, so this is the congenital weakness. Next we move on to acquired weakness. So this acquired weakness can be due to what? Yes, it can be due to surgery. So it is iatrogenic. So we have performed surgery on the anti-abdominal wall. We have cut it, we have opened it, we have manipulated it, and thus we have weakened it. So iatrogenic is due to surgical incisions. For example, McBurney incision. It is used for appendicectomy. McBurney's incision for appendicectomy, it can cause later, okay, a right-sided, because that's where we put this incision, right-sided direct inguinal hernia. inguinal hernia. Of course, it can lead to incisional hernia also. So that is a different thing we are going to discuss, but it can also lead to a direct inguinal hernia by what? By weakening the external oblique, the internal oblique, because we have cut through all these muscles to reach the appendix, right? So we have actually weakened the muscles, and that is the iatrogenic cause. The other cause can be an acquired muscle weakness, which can be due to obesity. It can be due to obesity, repeated pregnancy. So in all these, the anterior abdominal wall is stretched to a great extent, okay, and that can weaken the anterior abdominal wall muscles. So repeated pregnancy, wasting diseases. In old age also the muscles can become weak, and that is why we encounter a lot of hernia patients who are old, above 60, okay, average. So these are the causes for acquired weakness, so iatrogenic or due to muscle weakness. So we are done with, yes, weakness of the abdominal wall. What was the other factor? The other factor was increased intra-abdominal pressure. So increased intra-abdominal pressure. So what are the factors, or what are the causes or conditions in which we can have a prolonged increased intra-abdominal pressure? So the causes can be, number one, chronic cough like bronchitis, COPD, etc. So the patients cough chronically, they cough every day, and every time they cough, they are actually increasing what? They are actually increasing the intra-abdominal pressure. So why are these points important? These points are important because in practical, if you get a case on hernia, you have to ask about whether this patient has these diseases or not. So a hernia patient, you ask whether he coughs regularly or not, or he is a patient of COPD or not, because these are contributing factors, and that will help you in presenting your case, or go in favor of the diagnosis. So chronic cough like bronchitis, COPD. Next we have chronic constipation. So quite easy to understand that the patient is straining always during defecation, increasing the intra-abdominal pressure chronically. So chronic constipation. Next, parturition, giving birth to child. So that is definitely going to increase the intra-abdominal pressure. It's just like a huge constipation, something so big coming out through a narrow canal, the vagina, okay. So that is also an extreme increase in intra-abdominal pressure. So in gynecology, in obstetrics, you are also going to study about weakness of the pelvic muscles and stuff like that, okay, cystocele, rectocele, etc. So these are due to repeated childbirth. So here also it is going to be a contributing factor, that is parturition. Next is bladder neck obstruction, or any urinary obstruction which is chronic. So here also the patient is going to strain while micturating. So bladder neck obstruction. So this can be due to BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia, and these patients are also old. So a lot of factors can come into play. BPH, or it can be due to a stricture urethra. Next, it can be due to vomiting. So vomiting is also increasing the intra-abdominal pressure, contents coming out through the mouth, okay. Next is a severe muscular effort. So suppose you are lifting something heavy, okay, chronically, say a 10 kg, 15 kg a barbell or something every day. So if you try to do that, you are going to realize that you are actually increasing the intra-abdominal pressure. So if you do that chronically at a greater age, it can weaken your anterior abdominal wall muscles and can lead to hernia. And also, if a patient has ascites for a long time, it is nothing but an expansion of the abdominal wall, abdominal cavity, fluid accumulation in the peritoneum. So that is also a contributing factor. So these are the factors which can lead to an increased intra-abdominal pressure. So next, let's talk about the different parts. So an external abdominal hernia, it consists of what? It consists of, number one, a peritoneal sac. Number two, the contents, and number three, the covering. So the peritoneal sac, so whenever an organ is protruding, okay, through the anterior abdominal wall, it is bringing in a peritoneum along with it, and that is the sac as we commonly refer to. So this peritoneal sac, so suppose this is the wall and we have something that is protruding out of this wall, and the viscera, suppose this is the organ that is protruding, it is also bringing in the peritoneal sac along with it. So this bold dark thing is the peritoneal sac. So what are the parts of this sac? So the parts of this sac are, this is the mouth, this is the mouth, the narrow portion around this, it is the neck, okay, this portion. So if you can imagine the gallbladder, this is the, yes, the fundus as usual, this is the fundus, this is the outer covering, and yes, inside it is the content. So this is about the sac. So the mouth is through which the protrusion is occurring, the protrusion, the viscera is entering. Next, the narrowest portion is the neck of the sac, okay. Next, this portion, this outside bulging portion is the fundus. Then we have the coverings, and inside we have the content. Next, let's talk about the content. So what can be a content of the hernia? So an external abdominal hernia. So what can protrude out? The content can be, number one, it can be the omentum. The omentum is protruding out, and in that case we call this an omentocele. Omentocele. Okay. Next is an intestine. A part of the intestine can protrude out. A loop of intestine. A loop of intestine can protrude. In that case we call it enterocele. Enterocele. Next, we can have a Meckel's diverticulum as a content. So a content can be a Meckel's diverticulum. In that case we call this hernia Litter's hernia. Litter's hernia. Next, we can have a part of circumference, a part of circumference of bowel wall. So I'll explain this. This is known as Richter's hernia. Richter's hernia. Next, we can have two loops of intestine. Two loops of intestine. So if there is this one loop of intestine, then it is an enterocele. If there are two loops of intestine in the form of W, then it is known as Madel's hernia. Madel's hernia. If appendix is the content, then it is known as Amiens hernia. Okay. The content can also be a part of the bladder wall, a part of bladder wall, and sometimes we don't have any content as such. The content of the hernial sac is just fluid. Okay. So we have some named hernias here, and a lot of examiners tend to ask about these names. So let us go through the names. So omentocele, omentum is the content. Enterocele, the intestine, a loop of intestine is the content. So suppose this is the protrusion, the outer covering. Next we have the peritoneum. Suppose I am drawing that in red, and in blue we have the loop of intestine. This is the intestine, a loop of intestine. So this is a, yes, this is an enterocele. Okay. Next, if we have Meckel's diverticulum as the content, then it is known as Litter's hernia. Next, a part of circumference of bowel wall. So what do we mean by that? So in the previous case we had the whole loop of intestine like that. In this case, suppose the intestine is like this normally. What happens is that instead of this loop getting protruded in, instead of it becoming like this, so this is a normal hernia, that is an enterocele as we had drawn it, a loop has gone in. Instead of that, what happens in Richter's hernia is that this wall is alright, but a portion of circumference of this bowel wall becomes the content. This is the Richter's hernia. So a part of the circumference of bowel wall, that is Richter's hernia. Next we have two loops of intestine in the form of a W. So let's draw it to understand. So we again have our intestine here, but we have two loops in the form of a W. So this is one loop, and again this is another loop. Okay. So we have, so this is like a W. Okay, if you just rotate it, it's going to be like this. So this is one loop, and then again this is another loop, so like a W. So one part of this loop, if you observe carefully, this part is intra-abdominal and these two parts are, yes, a content of the hernia sac. What is the problem with this type of Maydels hernia is that this part which is intra-abdominal, it becomes gangrenous and we cannot detect it. When the patient presents with this type of hernia, we are visualizing from this part, this is the outside, this is the covering, this is the sac, and we see that everything is okay here. But what is happening is that inside we are having gangrene in this is intra-abdominal loop. So that is the problem with this Maydels hernia, and you can sort of remember the name that it is W. So it is W, if you just invert it, it becomes M. So Maydels is associated with this W kind of thing. So whenever you are trying to remember these names, a lot of times it can get confusing, whether Litters, whether Richter, whether Maydel. So in Maydel you have this sort of hint. Again, in appendix you also have A for A. So Amyand hernia, content is appendix. So it is simple that the content is just the appendix, that is known as Amyand's hernia. Next, it can be a part of bladder wall or it can be fluid, as I have already said. And the coverings actually depend on the hernia, where it is present. So if it's present in the abdomen, the covering is going to be the skin, the superficial fascia, deep fascia, etc. If it's present in the femoral canal, the coverings are going to be different. If it's present in the, say, the lumbar region, the coverings are going to be different. So the coverings of the hernial sac are different at different places, but the contents can be these things usually, and the sac we have already discussed. So we are done with those three parts of a hernia. Okay, next let's move on to basic or common features of all hernia. Common features of all hernia. So what are the common features which all hernia exhibit? Number one is that they occur through a weak spot. That is the basic principle of a hernia. They occur through a weak spot in the abdominal wall. Okay, next is they are reducible. They are reducible either on lying down or on direct pressure. Next is they have an expansile impulse on cuffing, and this is both visible as well as palpable. Okay, so whenever we are examining a patient of hernia, we have to look at these points. So the first point is okay, that's the basic principle of hernia. So it occurs through a weak spot. Next is that it's reducible. So whenever we ask the patient to lie down, that swelling either reduces spontaneously, or the patient can try and reduce the swelling. That is also a common feature for all hernia. Number 3 is that it has an expansile. So expansile means that the swelling expands, or the swelling becomes more prominent when the patient coughs. So you ask the patient to cough, and then you observe that it is both visible, and whenever you're palpating also, you get that feeling in your finger that the mass or the swelling is hitting your finger. So that is expansile cough impulse. So it is both visible as well as palpable. So these are the common features of hernia. Now let's move on to complications of hernia. Complications of hernia. So the first complication is easy to remember. We have said that a common feature is what? A common feature is reducibility. So whenever we ask the patient to lie down, the swelling reduces, or the patient or we can reduce the swelling. But a complication is that we cannot reduce the swelling, or it doesn't get reduced. That is irreducibility. So that is one complication. So this is when the content of the sac cannot be completely emptied. Okay, and this can be due to adhesions formed between the contents and the sac, or between the contents themselves. So it can be due to adhesion. So we have adhesion, and that is why the hernia is not reducing. Another cause can be growth of omentum within the sac. So the omentum has grown. So if the sac was of this size and the omentum of this size, it used to get reduced. But now the sac is of this size, but the omentum has become large. So it is not getting reduced. Another cause can be narrowing of the neck of the sac. So we have already discussed that the neck is the narrowest portion and it has further got narrowed. So narrowing of the neck of the sac. This is due to fibrosis usually. And there can be impaction of feces also. Impaction of feces. So we have a part of the intestine and we have feces inside them. Now what happens is that we have a huge amount of feces and it gets impacted. So we'll discuss this complication as separate heading also. This is known as incarceration. So this can also lead to irreducibility. So ultimately our first complication is irreducibility. The next complication is obstruction. So what is going to happen here? We have irreducibility, of course, irreducibility plus features of intestinal obstruction. Okay, so what are the features? The hernia is irreducible but painless. This is very important. Okay, next is the sac is lax but non-tender. Next is cough impulse may be present, and number 4 is we have features of intestinal obstruction. Okay, so vomiting, absolute constipation, etc. These are features of intestinal obstruction. So we are going to have it along with these features, local features, that the hernia is irreducible but it's painless, the sac is lax but it is non-tender, and cough impulse may be present. I am not saying it's always present, but it's not absent, it may be present. So this is another feature which is obstruction. The next feature is strangulation. So what is this? This is irreducibility again, irreducibility plus features of intestinal obstruction, so as the previous one, and arrest of blood supply to the intestine. Okay, this is strangulation. So what are the features? So the features are that the hernia is irreducible, same as with the previous one, but painful. Next is the sac is tense and tender. So it's not lax, it's not non-tender. Next is cough impulse absent. Okay, and last is same, features of intestinal obstruction. So what is important here? So we have our third feature or third complication, it is strangulation. So what are the important points in this? In the obstruction, it is painless, it is non-tender, the hernia is painless, and cough impulse may be present. Here the sac is tense and tender, it is irreducible and painful, and cough impulse is absent because we have a cutoff in the blood supply and gangrene of the intestine. The next complication is incarceration, as we have already discussed. Incarceration. So here what happens, that we have obstruction in the content due to impaction of feces. So this is due to impaction of feces, and here if you are going to press the hernial sac which is impacted due to feces, then it is going to get indented, okay, by your finger, as if you are pressing a putty or a wet mud. Okay, so that is incarceration. Next we can have inflammation. So the hernial sac, it can get inflamed, or we can have tuberculosis of hernial sac. Next we can have torsion of omentum within the sac. Okay, and next we can have collection of fluid in the hernial sac. And what is it known as? It is known as hydrocele of hernial sac. Hydrocele of hernial sac. Okay, so we have hydrocele of hernial sac. We also have a term which is known as hernia of hydrocele sac. It's very rare. It happens when we have a tense hydrocele and the hydrocele sac sort of protrudes subcutaneously. In that case, we call it a hernia of the hydrocele sac. But this is hydrocele of hernia sac. So here what happens? We have the sac and it gets filled with fluid. So we call it hydrocele of the hernial sac. So these are the complications: incarceration, inflammation, torsion of momentum within the sac, and collection of fluid. And we have already discussed irreducibility, obstruction and strangulation. So now let's move on to inguinal hernia.